Good day, Internet. This is DTNS Live for Tuesday, May 20th, 2025. From Studio Animal House, I'm Sarah Lane.
From Studio 7 in Los Angeles, I'm Tom Merritt.
On the edge of the 314, I'm Patrick Norton.
And I'm the show's producer, Roger Chang.
DTNS Live made possible by its listeners. That's you listening right now, unless you've covered your ears, in which case you don't hear what I'm saying. Thanks to you, Howard Yermish, John Atwood, Pat, and Dennis Johansson.
Okay, you can uncover your ears now. Everything's fine.
Okay.
Well, we'll see if it's okay, Tom, because we're just starting the show, and that show is DTNS Live. This is the show where we discuss the tech news to help us all understand it a little bit better as we go through it together. Patrick Norton, it's been a minute since you've been with us. How is it going?
Well, we've had a tornado here in St. Louis. Fortunately, over there, not here, but we've been yes. I mean, I don't want anybody to be hit with it. Well, outside of a short list of people I really don't like, I don't want anyone to be hit with a tornado.
Yes. I know the feeling. I'm like,
honesty.
for the most part, I wish no ill on anybody, but the tornado could hit that one house because they suck.
I'm not saying. But yeah, we've been running a generator for the last 5 days, and I look forward to the return of power and fiber, which hopefully will take place. I see trucks.
Ooh, yeah, that's good. Thank you
busy.
for doing the show today, by the way.
Yeah, indeed.
I'm actually enjoying it. It's a lovely distraction, sir.
Yeah. And we're going to take advantage of all you have learned on top of the things you already knew to talk about that kind of preparedness and stuff later in the show.
Yeah.
You think about that.
First and foremost, very glad you're doing well. Family's doing well. Glad to have you. Looking forward to talking more about how you navigated the storm. But it is a big show today because, of course, Google I/O kicked off earlier today.
Mm-hmm.
10 a.m. Pacific time announcement. The Verge said, it'll probably be about an hour. That's the word on the street. Not the case. It was a solid 2. We have lots of announcements we will talk about in just a few. But first, some news in the quick hits.
Bloomberg sources say Nintendo has chosen Samsung to produce the custom 8nm NVIDIA design chip for the upcoming Switch 2. That would be a shift away from TSMC, which made it for the Switch 1. There is strong demand, 2.2 million pre-order requests in Japan, but Nintendo had forecast 15 million first-year sales, slightly below analyst estimates, in part due to uncertainty caused by tariffs.
Bloomberg's Mark Gurman also reports that Apple plans to open developer access to its AI models in iOS 19 to integrate Apple's on-device language models into apps using a new SDK, the same models used in Apple Intelligence features. Full-scale Siri improvements reportedly are not expected until iOS 20 in 2026. However, WWDC 2025 officially starts June 9th, so we'll probably learn a lot more then.
The president signed the U.S. Take It Down Act into law that criminalizes the sharing of NCII, new acronym for you there, non-consensual intimate images, that includes deepfakes, and requires platforms to remove flagged content. So if you report that there is an NCII up, they have 48 hours to take it down. Critics worry that the law could be misused to chill speech, threaten encryption, and selectively target opponents. Enforcement falls to the U.S. Federal Trade Commission.
Apple approved a Spotify update for iOS that lets U.S. users view audiobook prices and then purchase them directly in-app. Premium users can also buy more listening hours beyond the included 15 hours per month. Spotify says this is a win for listeners. I mean, of course, Spotify will say that. And gives publishers better reach, which is true, while helping developers avoid extra Apple fees and restrictions.
Amazon's autonomous vehicle unit Zoox, Z-O-O-X, is expanding its testing in Atlanta, the 7th U.S. city, starting later this summer. Waymo recently expanded to Atlanta as well. Zoox has been testing its robo-taxi service without safety drivers in San Francisco, Foster City, California, which is in the Bay Area, and Las Vegas, and plans to launch public rides there by the year end.
Elgato launched new Stream Deck Everywhere products, including modular keypads in 6, 15, and 32 key versions for various DIY projects, a new scissor switch variant for tactile feedback, and a software-only virtual stream deck for desktop users. Elgato announced a $80 network dock for power over Ethernet support as well. All right, Tom, it is Google I.O. We got a big old keynote today, about 2 hours long, lots of announcements. So let's go through them.
Gemini, and there you go. That's what they talked about. Gemini and this, Gemini and that. It was funny watching all the reporters, including the ones on the Verge live blog, talking about, like, they promised us this would be an hour long. This is not going to be an hour long, and it definitely was not an hour long. However, they must have really believed it was going to be an hour long because all the NDAs lifted an hour into the keynote. So I was already writing up things about stuff they hadn't got to in the keynote.
They hadn't even talked about yet.
Yeah. Which is actually, that's not unusual. Microsoft Build, a lot of times, for example, their stuff all goes out of NDA at the beginning of their speech on purpose. I don't think Google meant this to happen on purpose. I don't know. But
Gemini,
anyway.
how long will this keynote take?
Funny you should say that, Patrick. I thought it would be fun to try the new Gemini 2.5 Flash preview that I have access to help me introduce the segment today. And it gave me 4 options. One that focuses on AI ubiquity, one that focuses on practical implications, one that's a bit more direct and engaging, and one playing on a specific intriguing announcement. So, which one do you think I should go with?
Well,
Or
I
would
always
you
like to
me read
start on
all
practical
4?
implications.
Practical implications, yeah. All right.
Yeah, just like,
any
hey,
objections to-
I'm just sitting around wondering what this is going to do for me. Tell me something practical.
All right. Here's what Gemini 2.5 Flash said to say about the 2-hour keynote in which people talked about Gemini 2.5 Flash. Today at Google I.O., it felt like we got a glimpse into the near future. Not some far-off sci-fi dream, but the actual tangible ways AI is going to fundamentally change how we interact with our devices and information in the very near term. The biggest takeaway? Google's not just building AI. They're building it into everything you already use.
That's not practical at all.
No, and it's also marketing speak.
Yeah, like that. I learned exactly nothing.
I like the direct and engaging one, the way it starts. Buckle up, tech fans, because Google I.O. 2025 just dropped a massive dose of AI directly into our laps.
Ouch!
Yeah, that's
really
get
heavy.
out of my lap. There isn't a lot of hardware in this Google I.O. There was Android XR devices. So they promise that the Project Muhan device from Samsung that they announced at last year's I.O. will ship by the end of this year. And also Samsung's going to make some smart glasses. Xreal is also going to make some smart glasses, kind of tethered smart glasses. But the biggest one I thought was smartest on this, they are going to partner with Gentle Monster and Warby Parker to make designs for smart glasses to be brought out by Samsung. So it'll be Samsung design, Google technology, but Warby Parker and Gentle Monster style.
Okay.
Gentle Monster is a good-looking brand. I don't know if everybody's familiar with it, but it's a little bit higher end
after
than the
today.
Ray-Bans.
I wasn't
Meta.
before.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the whole idea of AR, wear on your face, glasses, goggles, headsets, whatever it is. I am glad that Google has been working on this. I would be shocked if it hadn't have been. Google was at the forefront of this a long time ago. So this is, I think everything that we have seen, and I know we're going to talk about a lot of the stuff in greater detail, but all of the, well, not every single one, but most of the examples that we saw on stage, at the Shoreline Amphitheater at Google I.O. today were all things that you could absolutely benefit from by wearing a very, a pair of some sort of apparatus. I want to say glasses because that's just kind of like all we do right now. It's like you wear sunglasses or glasses when you're outside, but something in that vein. A lot of this stuff was meant to be like, oh, you're out and about and you get real-time information.
Yeah, they did a lot about Gemini Live, which is the old Project Astra, which is it can see things and describe them in real time, whether it's a screenshot or what you're looking at. They showed a guy getting ready for a concert, and he was visually impaired, and so he was holding his phone and pointing it at stuff. I'm like, why aren't you showing us Android XR doing that? Which they hadn't got to the part of the announcement where they had Android XR. I guess that's why. But it was a little bit all over the place in that respect. The other piece of hardware was Google Beam. Google Beam is a conference room thing. It's got 6 cameras. You don't have to wear anything, but it can do 3D modeling in real time for you. Works with Google Meet, of course, but also with Zoom. And then you have a 3D projected avatar for your video conference. Patrick, I know this one caught your eye.
Well, so I work for a company that does AV integration. I would like to point out that Google Beam has been known up until this morning as Google's Project Starline, and that's the basics behind this. They've been building momentum on this, or I should say, they first introduced this back in 2021. So it's been interesting to watch people react to Beam. How do I feel about Beam? Starline, Beam. But this is something they've been working on for approximately forever.
Yeah, this is shipping product too, because HP is going to have announcements about it in June, and then several clients are getting it by the end of the year. Not everybody's going to be able to buy it, but I think Salesforce and a few other people are going to be trying it out.
So,
not excited? Not that excited?
Everybody knows
it's real now. Yeah. It's not just Project Starline. I work with
people who see all of this stuff in its rawest form super early, and some of them are actually really excited about this and the feeling of it. It's also something that's going to be very much, you will go someplace to use this. You will go to corporate to use this. This is not. I mean, if you're home device. Independently wealthy, you could probably put it in your home, but most of us will not carry that kind of financial burden to put that in there. But it was funny seeing how little hardware there was this year and how many times they could point out that AI was going to be in everything.
Yeah. They were trying to make the case that Gemini is the leading model now. They showed it at the top of the leaderboard in every metric they showed. They talked about how people are using search more than ever. There's more queries per person now because of AI overviews, and people dig into it more. So trying to say search isn't dying, trying to make that case as well.
There's also a way to say that our AI search is kind of a hot mess, so you keep having to search to find the answer you need rather than what our AI turns up for you. But I'm going to let that lie right there.
I'm with
they
you
talked
on
about
that one.
Longer queries, and someone on the Verge Live blog was like, is it long because you have to give it so much information for it to get it right?
AI mode I've been using it is sort of my first stop, right? If I'm searching for something where it's like I just know I just need like a really simple answer, I just like I have to be reminded of where that restaurant is or whatever. I don't need AI mode. But if it's something like gosh, what did I look up? So, my dog has been feeling a little under the weather lately, and so I've been, just kind of searching for, possible issues, that kind of stuff. It's like I'm in a sort of my own little research project. AI mode is really great for that, and it does reference, where it's coming up with the information that it gives me in its blurb, and then if I, do the little down arrow, then there's a bunch more information, but still. At this point, Google itself will say like, this is an experiment, not necessarily fact. And so then you kind of use it as a jumping off point to, okay, I think I have, some places that I can now go into like actual research. I think it works well. I use it a lot. At first I was sort of like, I don't know. I don't like it at the top of the, upper left corner. Now I'm really used to it. And I think, the better it gets, the better it gets. But, a lot of businesses don't like it.
Go ahead, Raj.
Oh no, I was just saying this is sort of Google's just playing on the momentum of Google search. So there's a certain inertia for people to use Google search because it's either a habit or that's all they know. But if they hear about generative AI or AI powered search and they see it there and they don't really know anything else, they don't know about ChatGPT, they don't know about Cloud or anything else. They just hear buzzwords and they see it. I think the idea is just to kind of funnel people into it in a way that takes advantage of the fact that Google search is still still has the mind share when it comes to looking for stuff. Maybe not for more people are more sophisticated about the topic, but I like if my
Well,
sister
that's exactly
mentioned-
that's exactly what Google is trying to take advantage of, is they've got that share in the marketplace. You're absolutely right. And that's why they launched AI mode in a tab for all US users. So it's there, but they're still not replacing search with it because they don't want to undermine the existing interface for those people. Yeah.
Well, and at I/O there were a couple examples of, this is how, great it can work. It was the guy who needed a part for his bicycle. And,
that was a concept, though. That was eventually it will be able to do this.
Right. And you kind of go like, that's amazing. Wow. It's like having a friend on the other, end of the phone who's just like so good at fixing bicycles. For me, I was like, all right, well, I've got at Google. I was just playing around with the tools that I have, and Google was sort of like, would you like to use Gemini for search? I just got it out of nowhere today, and I was like, yes, help me find a new dentist, which I actually need. This is a real thing. And it was like, do you want me to search your email? And I was like, I guess. I don't know why that would be helpful, but sure. And it was like, here are some former back and forths you had with your dentist back in 2010. I'm like, okay, well, that's not what I wanted, but okay, I see what you're doing.
But thanks for access to your email.
Yeah, and so it was like, so it helped me find a dentist, and then it was kind of like, here are the things that you need to take into consideration before deciding to make an appointment with a new dentist. Bullet point. And I'm like, no. I want a dentist. Like, here's my zip code. I had to ask a few different ways. And then finally it was like, here's a dentist with 5 stars on Yelp that is, in your zip code. So a lot of the stuff it seems in a demo like, wow, this is so the future. But it assumes that you're going to be good enough at asking a question the right way. And that also assumes that you're going to learn how to ask it in a different way than the way that we've all been doing search for however many years.
I think Google would disagree with you there. I think what Google is saying is the demo shows that you won't have to know how to ask it as our models get better. And that what you're describing is the old model, but Gemini 2.5 is going to be so much better. And you won't have to do all of that stuff.
Yeah, I'm ready for it.
I mean, we were talking about this in pre-show. I do a lot of things where it's like I need to know what the torque value is for the rear knuckle on a 2014 Subaru, and I remember laughing kind of hysterically because it gave me some values that literally would have popped the head off of the nut. And it was, I had actually used the factory names for things and blah blah blah, but it was kind of crazy to watch. Where in some cases, it's always good for the tornado sirens to go up while you're in the middle of a podcast.
Your mic's good though; we don't hear them.
I have the noise suppression.
You have the warning suppression.
The tornado warning silencer on.
Warning. It's very very particular, but very useful. So if I suddenly disappear or go sideways at high speed, you know what happens.
Yeah, if you need to bug out, bug out. Don't
I
worry
will.
about us.
We're not at that point yet.
Okay.
Conversation for another day, but it's like it's when you're looking for specific things, sometimes it gets it right and a lot of times it gets it wrong. And it is also interesting where I've seen it could be an answer and I'm kind of like, okay, and I click on the link it gives me, and the link is like says something that's completely different. But if you're thinking like a 13-year-old and you're skimming really fast, you might think this is the answer, but the whole article is saying why this answer is actually wrong. And it's weird, right? Because Microsoft's sitting around like, okay, Copilot, we're building agents into Copilot and they'll be able to independently research things. And I feel like we're just a little ahead of where the technology actually is. It's
maybe not. I'll be honest. Like I'm with you that I run into those examples where I'm like, nah, that's not right, or is that right? Let me click in. The link you gave doesn't actually support what you said.
Yeah.
But they're becoming less frequent, and don't forget they stick out in our human minds more. We remember negative things. We remember wrong things more because it's a survival advantage, and so we don't notice it getting it right. We notice it getting it wrong, and that sticks out. And some of the independent evaluations are like, no, these things are getting more accurate and they're getting better. And I think what the companies are trying to do is skate where the puck is going instead of where the puck is. Like, yes, we want to have the agent and MCP. I want to say master control program. Wait for the email later on that one. But the protocol MCP that we talked about, it's like the USB for AI. That is really helping these agents to be able to do things better because they don't have to try to figure out the interface of the website. The website can just, like an API, give them what they need. That helps accuracy. That helps execution. So when Google was showing off the shopping thing, and it was like, and then we'll just tell it to go shop. I'm like, I believe that if it's got MCP support, which it does, and the website you're shopping at has MCP support, that it could probably shop pretty reliably. But not every store is going to have MCP support on their site. And so you're going to be restricted on the things that work. And like, yeah, it's going to use a model of you to show how the clothes fit on you. And I imagine that's going to be pretty accurate, but it's not going to be exactly accurate. So there are going to be times when you get it and you're like, this isn't exactly the way it looked on the AI avatar. And when you're buying clothes, that's a big deal.
Yeah. Real quick, MCP model context protocol. The one thing that stood out for me from the entire event really was the AI assisted coding, because it's not that I would want to learn coding, but if I just need to tweak something like a color or perhaps some like spacing in an application, just having something that can sort of ingest and then just do the tweak for you without you needing to roll up your sleeve and spending the entire afternoon figuring out how to tweak that one aspect.
That is what these tools are really good at. And Google announced Jules, its new version of what OpenAI calls Codex, for doing that kind of stuff and doing AI code assisting. But coding is one of the most common examples where they're like, well, I know it's going to get this right.
I actually, I am not a coder. I would not pretend to be a coder, but I can do, a little something, under the hood when it comes to, what a website looks like, what you're talking about, Roger, changing a color here and there. And I have played around with not just Google tools, but just the idea of, for example, I have a variety of Squarespace accounts. That's just kind of the, the model that I use, where I start off with a template and then I tweak it as much as possible. You can go into like full on custom tweaking if you want to. A lot of people don't. That's sort of the nice thing about Squarespace is like, we just do it for you. Pick the template you want and, add a photo or two, good to go. But you can customize that. Once it gets to that point, I get scared because I'm like, I'm going to screw something up. And it does actually, that can be really helpful where you say, just, look at the CMS, I guess, under the hood and tell me how to change this or that. It's not perfect 100% of the time, but it helps me. It's as if I have an assistant. Because I can't do it myself.
Yeah.
Or if I could, it would take me a long time, and I don't trust myself to get it right.
That's what a lot of these tools are doing, right?
Yeah.
And we talk about that all the time, is no code. You don't have to know the code. You just have to know what you want it to do. And Google showed that. They had somebody comes to you and says, I want it to look like a sphere with a bunch of images. And they showed that. They cooking showed it a little, but in 37 seconds, their model, Gemini 2.5, could take the napkin and understand what it meant and then change the code so that the app now was a sphere with the images on the outside.
Yeah. That was cool. And she even did say, we're going to do cooking show style, where we're not just going to sit here and wait for it to do it. We've kind of done this beforehand, but you get the idea. This is how you start, and this is what you end up with.
The one thing we should note for sure, if you want full details, Daily Tech News Show Briefing has them, but they added a more expensive tier, Google AI Ultra. So they changed AI Premium to be AI Pro. It's still $20 a month, but Ultra, $250 a month. That gives you high token limits, right? So you don't have the rate limits that you have even on the $20 a month one. It also gives you early access to the new VO3 model, which is the video model that can have the audio created and sync along with what's going on in the video. Stuff like that, you get early access. And they also threw in YouTube Premium, which I'm like, that's actually pretty smart because that's, $20 a month there for a lot of people already.
Yeah. I mean, even before the keynote officially kicked off, where they sort of do the, like, okay, we're about to start. Let's, show you a bunch of really cool animated stuff that was created with, it was Veo and Gemini, I guess. But that's what it's, as they were doing like the countdown. If you didn't watch it, I'm not explaining this well, but it was all basically like very high end, sort of live action, sort of not stuff that Google was like, this is what it's capable of.
I mean, VO3 making an old C person do C rhymes in real time was kind of impressive. And that was in the middle of the demo. So it's clear these models work and they do well. I get the impression from what I've seen in reactions from people is everyone's like, great, Google just spent 2 hours announcing they are at par with all of the others like Claude and Anthropic and OpenAI.
Yeah. And I will stress again, for a lot of people who think this stuff is like the next, the new iteration of sliced bread, they don't know where to go, and they see that it's part of Google. It's part of a system that they are already used to.
They launch AI mode for everybody in the US. Suddenly they're like, oh, what's that tab? Let me try that out. You're right.
I mean,
and Google can, and they talked about this a lot, personalize stuff with your permission and say, hey, would you like me to look at your YouTube history, your docs, like people have a lot of data inside of Google that they can take advantage of without sharing it with anyone else, just using it within your own account.
Well, Google I/O, it's going on for today was the big day, but it also extends through tomorrow. Not a lot of hardware announcements. Not really much at all. Lots of Gemini AI mode. This is the way forward. But there are other hardware announcements, and this one caught my eye in the sense of I do not need this, but I want it. The product announcement from Marshall. If you're like, Marshall, isn't that like what bands use for guitar amps? Yes, same company. Announced its first soundbar, the Heston 120. It's $1,000, but supports Dolby Atmos and DTS-X with 11 drivers, 150 watt output, styled a lot like Marshall's own guitar amp. So it's cool looking, but it has like some dials on the top that is very amp-ish. Supports Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, so, AirPlay 2, Cast, Spotify Connect, Tidal Connect, all compatible. HDMI 2.1, RCA inputs. The Heston 120 launches on June 3rd. Now, Patrick, I knew you were coming on board with us today, and this just felt like something that you would have thoughts on.
Well, okay, so Marshall's an interesting company. As you pointed out, they're a classic, super old school guitar amplifier brand. It has been really weird for me over the years to watch them come out with headphones and then Bluetooth speakers and home speakers. To their credit, they've actually done some really decent sounding stuff. And I say that because a lot of times when you see, super famous company do something it isn't what they do, it's a trashy kind of like, oh, somebody
it feels gimmicky.
Yeah. And it's, like I remember explaining to a friend of mine that Polaroid is not actually manufacturing Blu-ray players. I date the conversation, but you know what I mean? It was, like zombie brand revivals or just licensing the name. And I don't know if they're licensing the name or if they're doing these in-house, and I'm sorry for not having the answer, but the quality is there for the most part. All of that said, I feel like you can get much of the performance out of this soundbar for significantly less money elsewhere. Haven't heard it, but when you're looking at, some of the stuff out there, Samsung's doing some really great soundbars. Vizio's Elevate I think it's down to like $400. And those include not just a soundbar, but rear surrounds. You were talking earlier, Marshall's like, we don't need a subwoofer. We might have a subwoofer in the future. I'm not as fussed about that because so many of the subwoofers that come from so many speaker manufacturers and so many sound bars, will get you like from 100 to 80 or down to 60 or 70. So, Marshall's done a pretty good job when they have some space inside whatever box they're building, that they've done some pretty good job getting most of the low end audio in there. They know what they're doing. I'm super curious to hear one. I also want to remind anybody who wants to have the full Atmos effect, right? Any of these sound bars, they're basically bouncing the audio from the sound bar off the ceiling to you to give you those overhead effects. That works if you've got a smooth ceiling and nothing on the ceiling and no popcorn ceiling, and you don't have a cathedral ceiling or an angled ceiling. Any of those things will kind of make that Atmos that's built into any kind of sound bar, not just Marshall, problematic.
Yeah, I mean, so Marshall says the Heston 120, which is the soundbar we're talking about, has 2 built-in subwoofers, so no external sub. Although it does say that a separate sub 200 is the model, is coming later. Didn't give a timeline on that.
Anything
so we have 2 subwoofers, 2 mid-range units, 2 tweeters, 5 full-range drivers inside, 11 Class D amplifiers, 250 watt, 930 watt inside. So, it promises great sound. Now,
all specs promise great sound. That's the job of listing the specs, right?
Well, and here's my question for you, Patrick, is, if you go to Marshall's own site, and we have a link to Engadget's article about this in our show notes, but if you go to Marshall's own site, all of their pretty photos that show the subwoofer in motion is like the TV is mounted on the wall and the subwoofer is also mounted on the wall. There's nothing under it. It's not on top of a bookcase. I mean, maybe it is, but that's sort of the that's the elite way to do this. Now, that's going to make the sound a lot different, right?
Well, there's a lot going on here. I haven't dug too far into what they're doing for tuning. I will point out one of the things I absolutely adore about this sound bar. It is big physical knobs on the top of the sound bar, so you don't want to smush it up against the TV. But if you've ever lost the remote, if you've ever wanted to tweak something mid-song, you understand maybe why I'm excited about that. But they're leaning into that very tactile aesthetic at the same time when a lot of companies are, just use your phone to control it. It's like, have you ever had a moment where,
it kind of reminds me of a conversation we had a couple weeks ago about car manufacturers adding physical dials and knobs back into cars because not everybody wants everything to be on that touchscreen.
It's problematic for a lot of people. I think LG recently announced a flat screen technology where it will actually raise buttons out of it's a flat screen and then it goes into a certain mode and it physically raises something that you can touch or manipulate, kind of like a button. You can make it more tactile, but it's cool, right? The sound modes are built in. Your source is a big knob you turn, and there's some irony there, right? Because you're using like big twisty knobs like on the front of your amplifier with big knurled touchy feely stuff on them, and you can switch between your Roku and your Apple TV and your your Blu-ray player.
There's definitely a retro aspect to it. I mean, I wouldn't say that the soundbar looks retro necessarily, but
it's retro.
Yeah. Well, it's designed to make you be like, it's like I'm like jamming on stage. It looks the same as that amp that everyone knows.
But that amp design goes back to like the 1950s or 60s or whenever they started building them. I mean, so to me, like I see those cues and it automatically looks retro. But I can also see you totally looking at it being like it's a sound bar with a really cool logo on the front, which is actually not a bad idea. They're leaning into
not just a really cool logo, but the gold
aesthetic.
Marshall logo, right?
The gold Marshall logo. I
well,
love
and people, it's not like Marshall's the first company to be like, we have prestige and you're going to pay more for it. If $1,000 for all of this just feels like, nah, I'm not doing this. The company does say that it's going to make a smaller Heston 60 model. So the one we're talking about today is the 120. If the Heston 60 model is, I don't know, half the size, half the price, that could be interesting.
I say go for just if it appeals to you, get it, Sarah, get it, because
$999 isn't crazy,
it appeals
right?
to me.
It's on the upper end, but it's not ridiculous.
Gifted to me. Yeah, it's not. It's not ridiculous. I mean, honestly, I'm actually I'm in the casual market for a new soundbar right now, and I'm kind of crippled by choice. Patrick, you mentioned other manufacturers who are doing really good things, and a lot of different price points. And I don't need like the coolest anything. But I want something where it's like, if I'm going to, put the money into this, I want to feel good about my purchase. It's how I felt about my TV a couple years ago when I got it. I thought about that thing for 2 years. And I finally got one that was not top of the line, but it felt like this is going to last me 20 years if I'm lucky. And that's what I want. That's what I'm looking for.
Feeling.
It is.
No, Go ahead.
As much as we talked about the physical buttons too, I just want to remind people, like, this does have an app. It has, you can do EQ through the app and stuff. So it's kind of best of both worlds. Like the common functions are physical. And then it also is, it's a modern, even though it's got the retro design, it's a modern speaker. And the second thing that I want to make sure people don't get confused is this is Marshall, not Marshalls. So this is not the clothing.
It's not the clothing.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
The usual rebranded
Yeah.
Marshall, the clothing company. Marshall, the discount outlet.
Yeah. So if you were going to let us know that on our social network, I mean, you can go ahead and post it, but I just, I wanted to make sure we got that out there. But if there's other kinds of feedback, you can get in touch with us on our social networks at DTNS Show. We're on X, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Mastodon at DTNS Show. And for TikTok and YouTube, you can find us at Daily Tech News Show.
Tom, you know who knows the difference between Marshall and Marshalls?
Who?
Google Gemini.
Well, let's put that to the test, shall we?
Yes. While you're doing that, Patrick.
What is the difference between Marshall and Marshalls? Just a sec. Marshall and Marshall sound the same, but Marshall with one I at the end is a proper noun referring to the name Marshall Mathers.
Oh my gosh! With an I at the end. Where's the I?
I guess with an L. It must be an L. Yeah, with one L at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
It does go on to talk about
I had
Marshall
forgotten about Marshall
amplification.
Mathers, a different Marshall altogether.
There
Maybe
are
he
more.
likes the Marshall soundbar.
It does mention the retail store and the amplification company, as well as the aerospace defense company, Marshall Group.
A lot of Marshalls.
That's a new one.
A lot of Marshalls out there. All right. Well, Patrick, it has been a season of extreme weather in all sorts of areas across the world, yours included, which means that you got to prepare to get in a jam before the jam happens. You recently experienced a tornado, in fact. So how did you keep up and running? Or if you didn't, how did you at least get back up and running?
Well, it's funny if you see me glancing right every so often, it's because Amarin is now in full force at the end of my street. We've been out of power since Friday afternoon, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We've been out of power for the better part of 4 days now. So I live in the city of St. Louis. We've had our first tornado strike or touchdown since 1959, maybe an F2. But even the parts that didn't get hit by the actual tornado, which got nuked pretty badly, there's down power lines, fallen trees, and of course, when the power line goes down, it also takes out the fiber or the cable lines. If you lost your house, this is all trivial, but if you work from home or you can't get to the office and you're out of power for days, you have a whole set of problems that kind of stack on each other. And, a lot of my neighbors just immediately left and went someplace else because this is not a big regional catastrophe. It was very localized. So they go to their folks' house, friend's house, at least in one case, they're like, I don't care what's in my freezer. I'll clean it up when I get back, which I think is a bold move, Cotton, because, you never know what it's going to mutate into while you're gone.
Mm-hmm.
But, if you're thinking about power, right, do you have a bunch of, stuff in a freezer? Do you have a freezer? If it's winter, are you going to literally freeze, right? Are you going to lose all comms? You have to think about power if you're going to be staying in a place. If you really need internet because it's either how you communicate or how you work, do you have an alternate source, right? Our cable got ripped in part when a tree fell down on it and two other cars and another tree and another telephone pole. If the power is dead in the region, chances are, your ISP is down and your mobile internet might be down. There's a lot of places that have, diesel backup generators to support, the machines at the bottom of the tower. But once those run out of fuel, you are out, right? Or what feeds those towers can get ripped out in a really bad storm. It's satellite access you will have access to, but you again need to power the box at the bottom of the satellite dish, right? When you're thinking about power, it's pretty, if you have solar and a giant power back, you're good to go. And especially if the sun is shining, if you've got a generator, you have to fuel that generator. Something my folks have run into when there's been outages, because they've dealt with hurricanes in Florida and New Jersey, is a lot of times if the power's out, nobody can pump fuel in the region because a lot of the gas stations didn't actually have generators. So, how much how much gasoline can you safely store? How much gasoline can you legally store? Can you get your, I have a tri-fuel generator that runs off of LP, CNG, or gasoline. So I've decided that I really want to box around that generator because it's really loud, and B, I want to run a CNG line because at some point, I've just humped a lot of propane and gasoline over the past few days, and in a more severe disaster, you're probably not going to be able to get your propane refilled. You're probably not going to be able to get your gasoline refilled. So there's a finite amount of time you keep a generator running. Should you conserve that fuel for other purposes? Smaller power banks, like in the 10K to 20K range, or 10,000 milliamp, 20,000 milliamp range, are really amazing for keeping phones going. And a 10K, charging brick, or a 20K charging brick can keep your phone going for many, many days. In terms of laptops, you might get two, but more often you get one good extended laptop charge. My wife has decided it's time for us to, for me to get at least one 200 amp hour lithium-ion battery, which is a big fat 20-pound battery, so we can keep our phones and laptops going for an extended period of time. And also the entire family has requested that I have a secondary full-time source of internet because everybody blew through their internet caps in what feels like 5 minutes. Something, if you deal with a lot of video conferencing, or you need to do something that requires fairly a large amount of data, something I hadn't thought about in a long time, but especially Friday night and Saturday, 5G even 5G gets really slow when a couple of poles are down and everyone in your neighborhood is now streaming whatever on their phone. You need to be aware if you need to kind of work for a few days because you work remotely on your laptop. You need to be aware of how much hotspot or shared internet comes with your phone plan. Do you need to conserve it? Can you go nuts? Most unlimited plans are not unlimited, and I still find it shocking how data heavy some applications are, and really somebody needs to slap Facebook for the amount of data their pages consume, but that's a personal bitter thing that I won't go into. My service that I use Visible, and it's capped on speed. It doesn't really, I don't get like the super high speed 5G downloads, but it is, for the most part, I have not found any limitations to the amount of data I can download on that. And it's like, if you have a finite amount of data with your plan and you let your kid watch cartoons for 12 hours and you suddenly find yourself at 128 kilobits per second until next month, you're going to be really, really frustrated. So, you want to be aware of all these things before you make a decision in an emergency. And something I have been thinking a lot about ever since the last round of fires tried to take out Los Angeles is, try to stay off social media during an emergency. Don't doom scroll. The number of morons online commenting about stuff they've never experienced, don't know anything about, and maybe are convinced that can't happen to them because they live in a part of the country that never has natural disasters, is just infuriating. It hasn't been too bad for this one, but I can remember, I don't think I've been as angry at the internet in the XKCD cartoon sense in years as I was watching people discuss firefighting in Los Angeles, and in many cases demonstrating their near total lack of understanding about how firefighting works, wildfire fighting works, physics, or for that matter, drones and other things. But
that was actually one of the big things that I was in, and we were talking about people demonstrating their ignorance on drones during the fires. But one of the things that I found is there are very good sources of information online. You have to go find them and restrict yourself to them. There may be a feed on X that's really good. For me, during the fires, it was YouTube. I found that CAL FIRE was doing excellent briefings, streaming them on YouTube live and available after the fact. And that was essential for me keeping up with actual valid and non-inflammatory information. Did you find any sources like that during the tornado?
The tornado, I mean, part of what's wild about a tornado is, this storm moved through in about 25 minutes. I mean, from beginning to end, maybe 40 minutes if you stretch it to the sky getting gray. But it was kind of like there's clouds in the distance because I work farther out in the county, about 10, 12 miles northwest of where I live. And out there, it started earlier because it's farther west because the storm moved west to east. But, it went from, we got a tornado warning. I ducked outside because I always want to see if I can see a funnel so I can maybe leap into my car and run, because that's just the way I'm wired. And it was storming. And then about 5 minutes later, it got so dark because the storm was so dense and so low, all of the street lights in our neighborhood turned on. And about the time the streetlights in our neighborhood turned on, it was dropping down nickel to quarter size hail and, blowing 35, probably gusting to 50 and raining.
So they're not on timers. They're meant to turn on when, for whatever reason, it gets too dark.
Yeah. And in this case, it just got so dark, all the streetlights turned on. And then, it blew through in about 25 minutes. And what usually happens is St. Louis tends to slow the momentum of a lot of weather because it's this big, massive, it's asphalt and concrete and a huge amount of humanity, and it's a little bit temperature tends to be higher than most of the agricultural stuff around us to the east and the west. And in this case, it just didn't work that way. And in a city just west of St. Louis, Clayton was where the funnel started to form, and then it basically slammed down somewhere between Clayton and ran across St. Louis, then ran north. But as anybody who's been through an earthquake, which is just about everybody other than me, and maybe a really major earthquake, and Tom on the video right now is man, it's amazing how sideways things can get really, really quickly. So prepare before it gets exciting.
Yeah, and they bounce too, so you don't quite know exactly where they're going to hit next.
Yeah. Which is why
and the thing with the earthquakes is people think like, if it shakes hard enough, then your house falls down. That does happen, but or a power line goes down and then a fire starts. There's a chain reaction with a lot of this stuff, right? Tornadoes no exception.
So it sounds like what you're saying, Patrick, is looking out the window was your best source of information.
Well, I use a weather app called. Well, I've used a weather app for years called Windy, and I use like regular normal apps. Windy is kind of like, I am a weather nerd and I want to see where the storm front is and get fairly raw information. And so I was able to basically like call my wife and be like, hey, there's a whole bunch of hairball weather coming quickly. And then it went from that, and then just the sirens started singing out and our phone started exploding with warnings for the tornado. Mostly I was kind of there wasn't a lot of information to gather. It was more like, is it safe to stop hiding now? Can we leave the basement yet? And again, it was crazy, right? Because it was like 25 minutes and it jammed through and then went off to do its thing elsewhere.
Well, we certainly are glad that you and fam are safe, and hopefully. Well, first of all, I know a lot of people in the audience either learned something, hopefully, from this segment, or have anecdotes of their own, which is a great way for us to all kind of share information about how to stay safe and what may have worked for somebody in a similar situation or another disaster. Because let's be honest, life is full of them. Mm-hmm. In that uplifting vein, let's check out the mailbag.
Yeah, we got some comic relief from James, who wrote in about the Microsoft announcement of the MCP coming to Windows. Google mentioned MCP today at Google I/O. James wrote, "Guess I'm really old, but when I heard you referring to MCP, Model Context Protocol, I immediately thought Master Control Program from Tron. Hopefully this naming is just a coincidence and not some foreshadowing." Dun, dun, dun. Yes. I wonder if someone who did the acronym for Model Context Protocol thought that was funny.
It's possible.
It's probably 50-50. They thought like, hey, this works, but hey, it's also a very nice show that someone up here has a sense of humor.
There you go. Well, if you have a sense of humor, or even if you don't, you can write us. Let us know what's on your mind. Anything that we touch on the show that you want to expand on, something you want us to talk about in the future, a piece of news that you've seen, all is welcome. Remember, you can send all comments to feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. Patrick Norton, you survived a tornado, and we are so glad to have you with us. And hopefully the neighborhood will be back in order sooner than later. In the meantime, let folks know where they can keep up with all your work.
Oh my goodness, I'm actually going to have to look at this because I always forget my Blue Sky. Well, I'm still on X at Patrick Norton, and you can find me on Blue Sky at patricknorton.bluesky.social.
Interesting. Yeah, I thought they had taken down your 5G tower for a half second there, but you bounced back really fast. What are you using right now to stream, by the way?
My long-suffering iPhone connected to tethering. Yeah.
That's doing good.
Wow.
What carrier is that?
That would be Visible, who is actually I guess was recently purchased by Verizon, who they've been an MBNP for years and years and years.
The best part is when you said Visible, everything was good, but you didn't hear it. When you said Verizon, the internet stretched out. It's like, oh, you're talking about Verizon? We'll degrade your connection for just that.
It actually, that's kind of a catchy little jingle for a Verizon commercial in the future. Yeah, like.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, can you hear me now? I just had a tornado. Thank you, Verizon.
Well, before we get out of here, we got to name the show. During the show, people submit titles in our Discord, in our Twitch, and most importantly at dtns.showbot.tv directly. Everybody can do that. Our top vote getter right now is AIAIIO from Clinton Woodward.
Oh, very old McDonald of you.
Old
Clinton.
McSundar had an announcement. Batfig 2001 with using Gemini is like pulling teeth.
Ooh.
Ouch.
Yeah. Gemini doesn't torque the torque. That's to Patrick's example. Gemini Code of Conduct from Saray TW.
I like that. Yeah. Code of conduct. Get it?
Our soundbar goes to 11 because it had 11 speakers, 11 active.
No, you know what? That's actually pretty clever.
Yeah. Marshalls raises the soundbar from GPEG84.
Now GPEG, everyone's just going to get confused by that. They're going to go into Marshalls and they're going to get a T-shirt and expect a soundbar.
Yes, exactly. Please do. Go into your local Marshalls if you have one. GPEG also suggested all about Google I.O. and prepare before life gets exciting.
That's right. Yeah. Prepare for excitement.
And Fred 819 was seeking a doom scroll free zone is a good one as well. Sarah, what'd we go with?
Well, even though we got a lot of show titles, we went with something that we felt was very descriptive, and that one came from GPEG84, all about Google I.O.
Thank you, GPEG84. Big thanks to everybody who watches us on LinkedIn and YouTube and Twitch. Want to acknowledge Brian M64, resubscribed, back for the 43rd month with Prime. Free money. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Brian M64. Nick I Green back to using Prime, the 71st month to resubscribe. Technique gave us a shout out. Thanks, everybody, for your support in all the different ways that you can. Very, very much appreciate it. Let me just refresh here. Oh, yeah. Zoe Bring Bacon with 4 bits. Frozen Fushin followed us as well. Again, thanks to everyone who supports us, including the patrons at patreon.com/DTNS.
Today was all about Google I.O. I mean, we talked about other things on the show, but that's the meat of our show. But WWDC right around the corner. I know a lot of you care about both companies, and I mean Google and Apple. Eileen Rivera and I produce Apple Vision Show every week. We talk about Apple, but we also talk about Apple competitors, what we like, what works, what we would want more of, what you would want more of. It's a great way to join us, to have a fun conversation about Apple's vision and whether it matches what we, the users, want. Do subscribe now and join us if you can, applevisionshow.com. You can also watch us live here on DTNS Live at Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern, which is 2000 UTC. You can find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. Thank you, everybody who joined us live. Anybody watching after the fact or listening, thank you to you as well. Hope to see you live at some point. We're back tomorrow doing it all again with Scott Johnson. He's talking about Apple adding support for the Go.game engine to the Vision Pro. Talk to you more.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.